Welcome everyone in this course about 3D in Nuke and how to animate a matte painting. In this first chapter, you will discover the essential points for using 3D in Nuke, such as the 3D viewer, how to create and modify geometries, and how to work with light, shaders, and camera. Now guys, welcome in Nuke. So, as always, to start a project, I'd like to adjust the project settings. So we'll come to the Edit menu up there, Project Settings, and here the two things I'd like to adjust for now is the frame range and the full size format. So my shot will start at the frame 1001 and end at the frame 1100. And I will click on Lock Range to make sure that this frame range won't change when I will import images or other stuff later in Nuke. Now, the full size format. So I will animate that matte painting here. And that matte painting has for format 1920 by 842, which is a kind of weird fake anamorphic format. So this format doesn't live here in the current format in Nuke, so I will simply come here to New and create a new one. And I will name it Anamorphic HD, and then here I can type the size format I'd like, so we'll type 1920 by 842, and I will hit OK. As you can see, my viewer now is taking that new format we created, and this format will be used as well in reformat node and crop node and transform and rotos and everything we will create after. So this is important to start your project by creating the format you are going to work with. Now we can close the project settings and we are ready to comp. So let's move on to the next video to discover the 3D viewer. Okay, so in this course, I'm going to go quite often to the 3D menu here, and it's because all the 3D nodes are here. And I will start right away by creating a cube inside the geometry. Cube, there we go. And we just created our first 3D nodes. So I can recognize that it's a 3D node because it got those soft corners around. For example, if I create a transform node, which is a 2D node, you can see that it's a square box. So this is how you will differentiate 3D nodes and 2D nodes. Okay, I will delete the transform node for now. And for now, nothing changed, but if I connect my viewer to the cube here, you can see that my viewer is jumping to a 3D viewer. Okay, if you don't see the 3D viewer on your end, you can come here to that drop-down menu and switch from 2D to 3D. This menu allows us as well to change to different view, for example, from the side view, from the top view, etc. So for now, I will just come back to the perspective view, which is the 3D view. And now I would like to show you how you can navigate into that 3D space. So you will have to hold down the Alt key of your keyboard, and with your left mouse button, you can pan around. With the right mouse button, you can rotate around, and with the wheel of your mouse you can zoom and unzoom. Okay? If you don't like those commands, you can come to your Nuke properties. So if you're on the PC, it will be into edit and approximately around here. On Mac, it's under the Nuke here preferences, and we'll come to the viewer handle menu here. And here you have the 3D control type, and you can choose from other control type from another software you will be maybe more confident with. For example, my favorite one is Maya. So we'll simply click on Maya, hit OK, and now I can navigate in my 3D viewer the same way I will do it in Maya, which is more convenient for me, but it's a personal preferences. Now, as you can see, my cube is visible. And if I disconnect my viewer, my cube is still visible in my viewer. And why? Well, to have an element visible in the 3D space, you need to have the properties open here. If I close the properties, the cube disappears. If I double click on the cube and to open the properties, the cube come back. Of course, if your viewer is hooked up to a 3D element and I close the properties, that 3D element will be still visible here as well. If I were to add another geometry, for example, I could create a cylinder. And as you can see, the cylinder, the cube are here. I can see my cube because it hooked to the viewer, and I can see my cylinder because the cylinder is open in the properties. If I was connecting that guy here, I wouldn't see the cube because the cube is not open in the properties and not connected to the viewer neither. All right, I know it's a bit confusing, but trust me, you'll get used to it. Now, if I want to modify a geometry, well, I can easily do it using that little gizmo here. So I need to select the geometry I want to modify first. So here, for example, I click anywhere, nothing is selected, even if it's displayed here and open on my properties bin. I need to come and click on the geometry to be able to display that little gizmo here. And I will be able, for example, to move that guy on X, on Y, and on Z. You could modify those things as well directly into the properties bin here. If you want to scale or rotate your object, you can do it as well in the viewer. You will have to maintain the control key or command on the Mac to display the rotation gizmo. And if you want to display the scale gizmo, you will have to hold down Control and Shift or Command and Shift on Mac. And now you will be able to have your different scale gizmo as well. You can scale everything at once here. As you can see, as I do that, it modifies as well my scale properties here. I do have as well a uniform scale that we use quite often as well, and that we'll see a little bit later. Now, if I want to do the same thing to my cube, I can. Okay, I can move it, hold down Control, and I can rotate it. Oh, pardon. Up. There we go. And Control and Shift to scale. The cube is a bit different because it got that special things where you can select only the corners and modify it like that. But this is the only 3D nodes that allow you to do that in Nuke. Okay, great. Let's now move on to the next video where we are going to see how to see those 3D objects in the 2D viewer. See you there. In this video, let's see how to transform those 3D objects to a 2D image. Okay, right now I'm in the 3D viewer, but if I'm switching back to the 2D viewer, there is nothing. And this is because we need to render those 3D objects in 2D to be able to use them and see them in the 2D viewer. And for that, I will come to the 3D menu and I will select here the scanline render. And as you can see, if you remember what I told you earlier, it's not a 3D node, even if it was living in the 3D menu. Why? Well, because it's a square box and it doesn't have the soft corner. But this node will allow us to transform a 3D scene into a 2D render. So how it works? Well, I will connect my object to the scanline and let's see if something happened. Well, actually, no, nothing happened yet. And this is because we need to hook up a camera. Okay, so let's create a camera. So the camera is as well living in the 3D menu. And I will select the camera. And I will connect my camera to the scanline render. And things are a little bit weird right now because I don't know what my camera is looking at. So I will switch back to the 3D viewer here and I will come to adjust my camera a little bit. So as you can see, my camera is in the middle of the cube right now. So this is not nice. So we'll just, okay, little mistake. I want to select the Z of the camera here to just move it back in order to have my object in the frustum, the cone here of the camera. So basically it's like in any 3D softwares, and we need a camera here to shoot at the elements we want to render into 2D. Okay, so I can move it maybe a little bit more. Okay, I should have my object now inside my scene. Okay, I will hit the tab key. The tab key is the shortcut to switch between the 2D and the 3D modes. And now I will close all my properties for now. Okay, things open. And now I don't see anything. But if I were hitting the A key to see the alpha channel, I can see that my cube is here. And we don't see anything. The cube is black for now because we don't have any texture for the cube. But it's here in 2D. If I were to, for example, come here and rotate the cube, you can see that my cube is here. Perfect. Now, if I wanted to see in the RGB the cube as well, well, I will just have to apply to it a texture. So for now, let's do something very simple. I will come to the read menu up there and create, I don't know, a color bar, for example. And I will hook up the image input to the color bar. And now I do have a texture to my cube. Now I could do the same thing to the cylinder as well. And I will have to hook up my scanline render to the cylinder. And we don't see anything here, but the cylinder is here, as you can see. It's just that it doesn't have any texture. So, well, it's not very well placed on the frame, but it's just here as well. And if I were to hook up the color bar to the cylinder and switch back to the RGBA, as you can see, we can see the cylinder as well. So what if I wanted to see both of those objects at the same time? Well, we could introduce a new node that lives as well in the 3D menu that's called Scene. And the Scene node that we will use as well later will allow us to group several 3D objects, 3D elements together. So I'll connect my cube here and the cylinder as well. And now I can connect the object scene of my scanline render here, and I will have both of my objects. Last thing with the scanline render, we do have here a BG input. And this BG input is for a background. So for example, I could come here and create a checkerboard and connect my BG to the checkerboard. And as you can see, we will have that background here and my CG on the top of it. As well, an important thing to know is that the BG input of the scanline render is defining the output resolution of my render. So for now, if you don't specify anything, it will take the format that we specified in the project settings. However, if you were to connect another thing with a different format, for example, my checkerboard here, I could come here and change it to, I don't know, 8K lat long. Now, the render that will come out of the scanline render will be a 8K lat long. So this is great for changing the output resolution of the scanline render, but the problem is that it adds an alpha to the background. So sometimes what we do if we just want to change the output resolution is to plug a reformat node. And here, the reformat node, we will be able to change the formats that we want to use. And it will change the scanline render output, but it will not fill up the background alpha. Okay, great. This is just a little tip, but don't worry too much about that for now. For now, let's move on to the next clip and see how we could apply lighting to 3D objects. See you there. Alright, in this clip, we are going to learn how to light a 3D scene in Nuke. And I will start here with the fresh Nuke because I'd like to start working on that matte painting that I'd like to animate here. Okay, so we do have here a planet, and this is what we are going to try to do first in Nuke. So we'll come back to Nuke, and I will come to the 3D menu here and create into the geometry menu, create a sphere. And this sphere is going to be our planet. So I will go real quick here because it's stuff that we did in the previous clip, but I will create a scanline render and I will create a camera as well. As a quick reminder, you can create a node by typing the tab key and then searching for the name of the node that you'd like to create. Okay, so I got my camera, my sphere, and I like the texture for my planet as well. So we'll create a read node. So coming here to the menu and click on read, and I will navigate to the material folder coming with this course. And under the texture folder, you will find here the planet texture. So we'll open that texture on my read node, and I will connect the texture to my sphere. Now, I need to move a little bit my sphere in order to be seen by my camera. So I will jump off to my 3D viewer by hitting the tab key while my mouse is on the top of my viewer. And I will select the planet here. So just to make sure, when sometimes you don't select the right thing, to make sure you select the right thing, you can come inside your node graph and select the node that you'd like to modify. Okay, now with the Z here, I will just put my planet a little bit further away to make sure that the planet is viewed by the camera. And then I will hit tab again to switch back to the 2D mode. And I will hook up my viewer to my scanline render. And here it is, my planet is here. Great. Now, let's try to apply a lighting to this. So, in order to light our planet, we need to create light. Yeah, no kidding. So, I will come here to the 3D menu, and here I do have a light menu. And I will select the first one, light. So now we have a light, but as you can see, it doesn't affect our sphere. Why? Well, we need this light to be connected somehow to the sphere to be able to affect it. Well, for that, we will use the same node that we used in the previous video, which was here, the scene node. So I will connect my sphere to the scene node, and to the second input of my scene node, I will connect the light. And as soon as I do that, as you can see, the image changed. If I disable the lights, everything is very bright. Well, this is because when we don't have any light in the scene, Nuke will simply display the texture as it is. As soon as you create a light and add it to the 3D scene, then Nuke will take that light in consideration. So now that we create a light, how we will adjust it? Well, first, let's go see in the 3D viewer how it looks like. So we'll go back to the 3D viewer by hitting the tab key. And now in my scene, I have my camera here, we have the sphere here, and here we have the light. And I will move that light for now just to isolate it a little bit. And I don't know if you see here, but as I move the light, I can see that it changed a little bit my lighting on the Earth here, on the planet here. Just to make it more obvious, I will come into the light setting here and increase the intensity. Okay, now you'll see better what I'm talking about. Okay, perfect. Well, now that I see that, I will just have to position my light properly in order to create the lighting I want. Okay, let's set up our Nuke to work a little bit more efficiently with lighting, because this is great to see what's going on here, but actually I will need to jump back to the 2D mode to see exactly what happens. So let's say, okay, I want to put my light here. I will hit tab. Okay, maybe not. So we'll come back here and modify. This is not the easiest way to do it. What I like to do is to create another viewer and try to see in real time what happened in 2D and 3D at the same time. How to do that? Well, you'll see it's very simple. Let's come here, click on the little icon here, and I will click on Split Horizontal. So basically I'm creating a new pane where I can put something else. And I will come into my node graph and do Command I or Control I to create a new viewer. And I will hook up that viewer after my scanline render, and I will move that viewer here, right here. Then we have two viewers. One, the viewer 1 here, as you can see the name, and the viewer 2. The viewer 2 will stay in 2D, and the viewer 1 will be our 3D viewer. So now if I move my light, I can see more or less in real time what I'm doing. Okay, now we are actually ready to light the planet. So let's meet up in the next clip to do so. See you there. Alright, in this video, I'm going to try to recreate the lighting of this planet using the lights in Nuke. Okay, so here I do have a strong lighting coming from the sun behind the planet that creates that rim light on the edge of the planet. But as well as you can see here, we can still see the details on the planet. So what I'm going to do is to create a few lights to recreate that rim light effect, but as well another light to maintain the details inside the planet. So let's try to do that. So first, I'd like to move that light to create that kind of rim light on the side here. So let's move it. So I'm not going to try to be like very accurate as I will do in a 3D software. Here, I'm just trying to cheat the feeling of the lighting here. So for example, here, that will be not too bad. But the problem that I will have with that current point light is that the fade off doesn't work that great. In order to get like a great lighting with a great fade off, I will have to use the spotlight. So as I switch to the spotlight, I don't see anything anymore. And this is because when it's on spotlight, the light is emitted through that cone here. And I will have to rotate my light for that cone to hit the planet. So how I do that? Well, as we see earlier how to modify things, I will just hold down the Control key or Command if you're on a Mac, and I will rotate my Y-axis here in order to hit the planet. And now maybe I will need to move my lights because we don't see much anymore. Okay, this could be a little bit tricky, guys. So it's normal if you get frustrated at first because it's not super easy to adjust lights on Nuke. So there is another cool tips you could use if you want to adjust a spotlight, is that you can come here and select your light in the list. For example, light 1 here. And now you are going to see what your light is pointing at. And if you do a control click on the little camera icon here, or command click if you're on a Mac, it will turn that camera green, and as you move your inside the viewer, you are actually moving your light the same way. So that could be a good way to adjust your lighting a little bit as well. When you are done with that, don't forget to click again on that icon. Otherwise, if you move your mouse around the viewer, you will change the position of your light, and you definitely don't want that. Okay, now that I get that lighting on the side here, how do I get more of that fall off feeling here? Well, I will come to the light parameters, and here I want to adjust the cone angle. And as I adjust the cone angle, oh, what's going on? Okay, maybe, okay, first you need to switch to the fall off, to switch on the fall off, and then you will be able to adjust the cone angle parameter. There you go. Okay, you can try as well to play with the other parameters to see if it's better on your end. Okay, and now I got more of a fade off, a nice fade off. I could adjust the intensity a little bit to get what I want, okay? And maybe move my light as well. But for now, I just want to have more or less just the edge of the planet. Okay, so this is going to be our key light. I'm not going to go through all the parameters of the light. I will let you experiment with it, and it's pretty easy to understand what does what. But for now, let's just rename our light key light. Key light. All right. Now let's create other lights. So I will hit the tab key and create another light like that I will hook up to my scene. And boom, everything becomes flat again. Why? Because we now have a strong point light coming from the camera. Well, good. Maybe I will put it a bit closer here. And I could use that as my fill light, but I will simply decrease the intensity a lot because what I want is simply to keep a little bit of details, but I don't really want to see anything. Okay, cool. And now, so we'll call that fill light. And now I'd like to accentuate my rim light. And for that, I will create a third light. So we'll hit tab again and look for the light, connect it to my scene. And this light, I will change the light type for directional. Now, the directional light is a little bit different as the position of the light doesn't matter. The only thing that matters with the directional light is the orientation of the light. So what I'm going to do here is to increase the intensity of that light to be able to see properly what I'm doing. And what I'm going to do here is to hold down the Control key to access the rotation gizmo, and I will move that light around to try to find the right position for my light. So it's not in this direction. Oops. I just want to affect the green rotation here. Okay. If it's too hard to do it on the gizmo, sometimes it's better to come here and do it manually inside the properties bin directly. So what I'm doing, I'm putting the cursor of my mouse just in front of the decimal here, and with the up and down arrows, I can easily switch the rotation of my light. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just to find like that. Just to try to create a great feeling of real light. Just that hit here. And I think this is great. Can I toggle off, on and off? And I can see that I created a great rim light. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe I can boost a little bit the intensity, but we'll be able to adjust that a little bit later. Okay, so here we did what we called a 3-point light system with a rim light, a key light, and a fill light. And you will find that type of lighting quite often. So I just wanted here as well to demonstrate the 3 kinds of lights you can use in Nuke. Don't expect Nuke to achieve crazy lighting, but for simple things that could be very helpful. So now you got the basics, and I will encourage you to play around with those lights to see what you can do. And when you're ready, let's meet up in the next clip to see how we could apply texture and shaders to objects. See you there. In this video, we are going to have a look to the font shader in Nuke. So if we go to the 3D menu here, we can see that we have a shader category. And if I go there, I can see that there is a few options here. I'm not going to go through all of them, and we will have a look only to the font shader here. The font shader will be, I will say, the more advanced shader that you will find in Nuke. So don't expect anything crazy like you will find in a CG software. Actually, it's very basic, but it's kind of useful because you can tweak how the light is affecting your object. Basically, it's a sort of super simple material. So I will connect my func shader to my sphere. And as you can see now, we do have that kind of feeling of a plastic texture. Now, this is how that shader is reacting to the lighting we created. For example, if I disable one light, you can see how it changed, right? Now, I will be able to tweak that shader to achieve the look of the texture I'd like. For example, I can here reduce the specular to 0 actually. So all of those parameters here can take a map, and this is why it's pretty great. You can here plug the color, here the map D for the diffuse, the map E for the emissive, the map S for the specular, and if you'd like to tweak the shininess, it's right here, map SH. Okay, so the color of the planet here should be plugged to the diffuse. So I will plug that guy here, and I will get more or less the same result with or without. So this is what I was expecting here. So this is great. Now, if I wanted to add some specular, I could. If I will change the color, I could as well. This is great. But what I can do as well is to actually combine map within our shader. And I will try to do that right now by adding some emissive. And for that, I will create a read node, and I will go to the material folder coming with this course, and under the texture folder, I will come and select the planet lights. I will open that guy, and now I will connect the new read node to the map E for emissive, and I will come to my func shader here, and I will increase the emissive. And as I do that, we can see the city lights popping up on our planet. And this is great. Okay, now if you want to tweak it more to add other maps, I let you try around. For me, this is more or less what I'd like. The only thing is that I believe that most of the lights are on the other side of the planet, so I just like to rotate my planet a little bit. So I will come to my sphere, and I will rotate the Y, so maybe let's try 50. 50 is great, maybe a little bit more, 70, well, more or less, 60 is nice for now. All right, this is it. So this is very basic, but that could be useful in certain case. All right. Now, in the next video, we are going to see a little bit how to work with the camera node. See you there. In this video, we are going to have a closer look at the camera node and how to work with it. So right now you can see that here I have my camera in my scene, and this is what we see here through my camera. And so I could adjust its position here directly in the 3D viewer in order to try to find the framing that I like. But this is one way of working, and this is a way that I like a lot, having a 3D viewer here and a 2D viewer here, and that allows me to do a framing easily. But there is another way which is great as well, and I'd like to show you. I could come here in my 3D viewer to that drop-down menu and select my camera, here camera 1. Now I will look through my camera. So this is great. I could, for example, come here and adjust my properties, and I could do my framing in the 3D viewer directly. Now I could click as well on that option here, and now that will lock my viewer through that camera. For example, I cannot pan anymore. I will be always having that little square here just to show me that I'm looking through the camera. Okay, another thing I can do, and I think this is one of the best options in Nuke, is to do a control click on that camera here. And now when I'm moving into my viewer, I'm actually moving the position of my camera. Pay attention to those things here. as I'm moving my camera. So this is a great way as well to frame your shots. So just one thing, when you found the perfect framing for you, don't forget to uncheck that camera options, because otherwise, as you will move inside your viewer, you will actually change the position of your camera. Now, as we are talking about how to set up your camera, I'd like to show you that tab here, the projection tab. The projection tab allows you to change, for example, the focal length of the camera. For example, if you'd like to recreate a camera with a 35mm, you can enter here the focal length of your camera. You have other options, the aperture, the near clip, far clip. I won't go through all of this right now. Now, last thing I'd like to show you as well is how to import a camera file. Well, you need to create a camera node, as we have right now, and you need to go to the File tab. And you will click on Read from File, and those options become available. So I will click on that guy here, and now let's navigate to the material folder coming with this course. Inside the 3D folder, I will select the shotcam.fbx, and I will click on Open. Nuke will ask me if I'm sure that I want to read that file, because it will destroy the current camera data. So whatever you modified in your camera will be destroyed by those new data from that file. So here I'm sure, so I will click on Yes. And now I can see, if I come back to my camera, that those guys turned blue. And this is because we have an animation in that camera file. So great. As well, everything is great, and I cannot adjust those values anymore, just because that node is now in read from file mode. If I'd like to modify the animation or the different attributes of my camera, I just have to uncheck the read from file, and I will keep the data from the file, but now I can go and modify them. In my case, I just don't want to modify them, so I will click again on the read from file. It asks me if I'm sure, because it will destroy the data again, so yeah. And now I'm sure I'm safe that I won't change the data, and I will work with the camera I'm supposed to work with. And this is the camera we are going to use in the next chapter to animate our matte painting. So this is great as it is. So before finishing this video, I'd like to rename my camera to Shotcam, because this is my main camera, and we will see in the next chapter that we will create other camera for camera projections. So it's great to rename your main camera something simple to identify. Alright, well, this is it for this video. I will meet you in the next video to suggest you some homework before going further to the next chapter. See you there. Alright, it was a dense chapter. We've seen a lot. Basically, we've seen how to create primitives in Nuke and how to apply a shader to them and textures, as well as how to light them and render them in 2D through a scanline render using a camera. This is a lot of informations, and I would suggest that you play around with 3D before going further. So what I would suggest you to do is to go online, and if you look for free planets texture map, you will actually find a lot. So that could be a pretty interesting and funny things to just try to download a few texture map and to create a few planets and see them in the same viewer. Then you could tweak a little bit the texture, try to play a little bit with the shaders and the lighting and camera animation. Well, this is my suggestion. And when you're done with that, let's meet in the chapter 2 to see how to animate that matte painting coming from that PSD file. See you there.